So hello friends, I am Neeraj. In this session we are going to see about functions. So what functions are? So functions are basically we use functions to organize our code in a more structured way. And for actually for with a monolithic architecture, monolithic application, so where we keep on writing each and every stuff, every business logic into one single file. So providing maintenance and debugging, that would be very difficult. So that is why we use functions to structure our application in a more modular way. So that is the first aspect about functions. And second one, that is a very important concept of software engineering, that as per the design principles, so one function should perform only one given action. So that way, providing maintenance and auditing and testing, so that etc. So that can be performed very well. Now coming back to our Golang, our Go functions. So Go has tremendous support of multiple return values, unlike many other programming languages. So we will see that in action. So we will cover this multiple return values, and we will also see how we can pass parameter as a reference and as a so that we can access the we can alter the actual variable so from within the function. So that also we will see, and we will also see about variadic functions, and lastly we will see about anonymous functions. So let us start. So first of all, so let us create a function. So our function is for creating a function, so we use func keyword followed by the name of the function. So let's say we are going to create a function that that should display a greeting message. So the name of the function followed by the parenthesis, and we will end with the have the curly braces. So if our function is going to return something, so we will have something here, but for the basic function, so only curly braces. And this whole block designed the application, and whatever we write inside the curly braces, these two curly braces, so that is called the function body. Okay, so let us try to write something. So let us say println, and we are going to display a very greeting message. So hello from inside function. Okay, so let's save it. And now if we try to run our program, so actually nothing will happen, but let us see that. Go run main.go. Okay, there is a typo, main.go. So nothing happens because although we created our function, defined our functions, but we never called it. So as we know that main function is the entry point, so inside the main function we need to call this function, and calling a function is also pretty easy. So just we write the function name followed by the parenthesis. Just save it, and now if we try to run our application, so we are getting the output hello from inside a function. So this is the basic structure, basic syntax of our function. And now let us see how we can pass the parameters. So let us say we want this hello after hello, and we want to accept that whoever the logged in user, or whatever value we pass from here. So let us print from, let's say hello Neeraj, hello Amit, something like that. So let us say we declared a variable name, and we assign the value to, let's say, Neeraj, and we are going to pass this value. So name is being passed, and here since we are passing it, so here we have to collect it. So here also, so we will collect it as a string, and here we can say replace it with name. And so now let us first run this program, and then I will explain what is happening here. So we are getting the output hello Neeraj. So what is happening here is, at this very position. So we are saying greeting. So we are actually calling this function, and we are passing this name, this variable name. So actually what is happening here is this Neeraj is coming here, we are passing here, and this is whenever this function is being called. So actually this is coming into this variable, and this variable in turn we are assigning here and we are printing it out. So that is why, so this is how we can pass the pass any value to a function. And when we pass the value to a function, so this is called argument, this is called parameter actually, sorry, and where we are collecting it, so this is called an argument of the function. Okay, so let me clear it out. So this was the, this is, so this thing we understood that. And also let's say we want to, so this was the basic function, and now let's say we want to perform some computation. So let's say we are going to let us see how we can return some value from the function. So let us say we are going to, we will need to write a function, so which will sum of the two values, two params, right? So let us create a function. So we will say, again start with func, and we will say display sum, and this function is going to accept two parameters. So let's say x, that would be an int, and second value would be also be an int. So and this function is going to return not return, rather first let us see print ln, and we will say sum of x and y, and we will say x plus y. We will save it, and here we will call this function. So display sum, and here we will pass on two, first parameter and second parameter as 3. So let us see what happens. So we will run our program. So we are getting it output, the sum of x and y is 5, because we have supplied, we have passed the two parameters 2 and 3. So actually 2 came in at the first location, and the second parameter 3, that is collected in the argument, is the second argument in the variable y. So that is why, since the x is also a variable and y is also variable defined, so as a function argument, so that is why we were able to come to perform the mathematical computations, and we are getting the output 5 here, right? So okay, cool. So let me clear it out. So this thing we understand, and now let us see, there is one more thing which you are probably going to see very often, and that is if both of the all the parameters are of the same type. So instead of writing it something like x int and y int, we can omit it, simply have the x comma y followed by the type of the variable. So that is also pretty valid. So let us try to run it also. So yes, so it is also perfectly working fine. So this way, like we have seen what a function, and we can also see how we can pass parameters. And this time now let us try to do something to return some value. Okay, so let us return. So returning is also very easy. All we can say, use the return keyword. So return, and what we want to return, simply write. So let's say we want to return x plus y. Okay, so but there is a problem. So we cannot, so since this function is going to return something, so we need to tell the compiler that okay, so this function is going to return something, so we need to specify the return value as well, what the type of the value that this function is going to return. So we will say here very simply, we will after this parenthesis we have to define the type of the return value. So since the x and y both are integer, and the sum would be also be integer, so we are going to return the int here. So let me copy this out here, and we will collect this return value from the function calling, where we invoke the function, and we will say sum of x and y as sum. We will say sum here, sorry, sum. Let us try to run our program again. So again we are getting the same thing, sum of x and y is returning as 5. So what is happening here is again the same thing. This value 2 is going into x variable x, 3 is going to be in the variable y, and when we wrote this statement return x plus y, so basically this is coming here, and from here this is going to be collected in the sum variable, and this sum variable we are printing here. So this is what happening under the hood. Okay, so this thing we understand. Now let us try to understand how we can return multiple values. So Go has got the fantastic support for multiple return values, and this is also pretty easy. So if our function is going to return multiple values, so we need to wrap inside the parenthesis just like this. And here, so let's say suppose we want to return sum as well as multiplication of x and y. So these two values we are going to return. So right now there is this error. So and this is saying that this function is supposed to return only one value. So that is why we are getting this error running, and we can simply write it something like this. So we are this is with this one we are telling that we are returning an integer values and an integer value. So two integer values we are going to return, and here also since it returns two values, so let's say we will also say sum of x and y is this, and we will say multiplication of x and y, and we will change the value, the variable name with the right. Now let us try to run our program again. So we are getting sum of x and y is 5 and multiplication of x and y is as 6. So okay, so let me clear it out here, and few more. So we have seen multiple return values, and now let us see how we can pass as a pointer. So let me change something here. Let me get rid of this, and let us say we have a function, declare a function func, and let's say this function is going to have a pt func. Let's call any name we can say, and this is going to accept a integer, and it is not going to return anything, so curly braces, and inside the function body. So basically this let us see what happens actually. So we will declare a variable. So let's say x is equal to 10, and let us say fmt dot println, and we will say x is, and we will say x. So first we are going to print the value x, and again this time we will call this function, and in this function we are going to pass value x, and we will say again after pt func call, actually nothing going to happen. So the x is also 10 and y is also 10, because with this one, when we write this one this way, so actually what is happening here is, so by default the parameters are passed as a value and not as a reference. So what is happening here is the value 10 is coming here, and this 10 is being copied. Actually all this thing is happening inside memory. This is passed value 10 basically as a value, and since this is not going to do anything, So the value of x is 10 and 10 and nothing much changed. But also we can do one more thing. So let us here say x equal to let's say 20, and let us try to run this program again. So here also our value x is again 10, and this after the function call again it is 10. However, we have changed the value x from 10 to 20, but actually this change is applicable on site in this scope and nothing beyond. So hold on for a few sessions. So we will talk about we will learn about function about scoping of the variable. Okay, so don't worry about that one. So that is why nothing is happening. But if we pass the x as an address operator using ampersand, and here also if we collect it as a pointer, so now we are changing it as a pointer variable. And now if we try to run our program this time, so earlier the value of x was 10, and after this function call the value of x has been changed from 10 to 20. But inside our main function we didn't reinitialize the value of x anywhere. Rather we have reassigned the value x inside the function name. So this is how we can pass the value as a reference. And since actually what is happening here is when this x is being passed, so actually we are passing the address of x in the memory. For example, say again recall it. So this is going to be stored something similar. So with this way what we are saying is we are actually passing the address of the variable x and as a function parameter, and this address is being collected here as a function as a pointer, as a integer pointer. And here we are changing that the point as changing the value of the pointer from 20, initializing it. So that is why, so with this statement actually changing the value of this address location from 10 to 20. Okay, so this is why pointers are very powerful, and we can do a lot of things from pointer. But again, so this is as in the pointer video, so we should be careful. Okay, so we have seen pointers also, how we can pass the value as a pointer. So let us get rid of these stuffs, and now let us see what the variadic functions are. So variadic functions are just, let us try to understand this thing, that our fmt.println, that is itself a variadic function. So variadic functions, so we can pass any values to it, any number of arguments, let's say anything, and it would be printed very easily. So we can print it whatever the function parameters we want to provide, so we can provide that stuff. Okay, so let us create a variadic function. So we will call it variadic func, and also let me first create the function. So we will say variadic func, and we are going to accept numbers, and the type of numbers would be a integer. So we have to specify 3 dots. So 3 dots, let me first write it and then I'll explain it. And here also let us see, we are going to pass 1, 2 and 3. So any number of arguments we can pass, so there is nothing wrong. And we will initiate a for loop, because this nums would be n number of parameters can be passed, so we will loop through it. So it returns a k, and we will say num equal to, we will use the range to nums, and here we will say fmt dot println, and we will say num. me, I think like I forgot a comma. Yes, and we will say k also. Yes, like this. Let us try to run this program. So k is basically index, because when we loop through it, so it gives the first, it gives a index, and index starts from 0 index, and second we are getting the values. So we can, here we can provide n number of arguments, so there is nothing wrong. So this is called a variadic function. So anyway, so it is working perfectly fine. So we have seen covered variadic functions, and now let us see about the anonymous functions. So anonymous functions are, they are very handy functions basically without the function names, and we can say something like fmt dot println, and we will say from inside anonymous function. Let's save it, and we are going to call it also here. Let me clear it out. So we are actually here we are not giving any function name. So this is why this is a variadic function. Variadic function, anonymous functions. So this anonymous functions are without the function name, only the function body. So we are getting the this is printing in the console output as from inside function. So they are handy in such a way that with this one, so we have defined the anonymous function, and we have, with this parenthesis, we have called it also. However, we can collect this anonymous function into some variable for later use, like this. And if we are going to collect it into a variable, and so we have to omit the parenthesis. So if we run this program again, so we are again we are executing, what is happening here, that with this one, what we are saying, that we are actually creating this function, and we are assigning this into variable f, and here with the variable f we are invoking the function with the parenthesis. Okay, so isn't it is interesting? So I hope so. So it was interesting, and I believe you enjoyed the session. So that's all for this session. So we have covered most of the things, and there is one more thing, that is struct functions. So that thing we will cover when we learn about interfaces, because that is basically a intermediate level of concept. So we will see that in next session, not next, rather in some other sessions. Okay, so that's all for this session, and if you have any query, any doubt, or anything to say, so please do let me know in the comment section, and I will see you in the next session. So till then, take care and happy coding.